Tonight we spoke about the most powerful people in Judaism, us, the Jewish women. Please join to find out. All right, so we are starting tonight a new topic. We are starting a topic that we've of course touched on in the past many times, but we keep revisiting because it's a really foundational topic to understand, which is how Judaism looks at the woman. I mean, hey, listen, we definitely want to know that. And of course, especially in terms of the woman as redemption, bringing redemption. So we are going back to this very, very significant topic. And each time we revisit it, we gain a new depth of understanding our role, our responsibility, what we're doing about it. So when the Lubavitcher Rebbe discusses this, he often goes back to his predecessor, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was, of course, Rebbe under the communist regime. He suffered. He had 10 imprisonments, almost lost his life. And after 1927, his final and most horrific imprisonment, actually, they kicked him out of Russia. They're like, well, we can't get rid of you. We don't want you around. And sent him to Riga. I mean, it was a lot more complex than that. There was actually then a negotiation going on. It's actually very interesting. I'll just go into it a little bit so you see the hand of God in everything. Obviously, they didn't really want him to leave because obviously they wanted power. And when he's under their control, he has power. And when he's in the free world, he doesn't. So what in the world did these communists who so much wanted to destroy him, why did they give him freedom? So what really was going on, the real backstory, is that at that time in 1927, Russia wanted to begin having relationships with the rest of the world. Because since the communist regime, Russia was in isolation. But who's going to want to have a relationship with Russia? So there's this little insignificant country close to Russia. Chava's a little familiar with it, called at that time Latvia. And Latvia was a very small country, very unimportant, except it was sort of like Russia's ticket to the rest of the world, because Latvia, of course, was like the rest of the world, so it had normalized relationships with the rest of the world. So suddenly this little insignificant country of Latvia becomes very, very significant to Russia, for them to have relationships with Latvia, and then through Latvia, they hope with the rest of the world. So Russia at that time was actually in negotiations with Latvia. Now, of course, I say it happened to be, AKA the hand of God, that a very important minister in Latvia was actually a Jew, a religious Jew, and a Chabad follower. So he suddenly has this enormous power with the Russian government to broker this treaty between Latvia and Russia. And as such, one of the conditions he added to the stipulation for this treaty was allowing the Rebbe and his family to leave. And that's the real reason how he got out. Again, just bringing it in, totally parenthetical to what we're saying, but so strongly seeing. And why did Russia suddenly then want this? And why did they pick Latvia as a country? And why was there a Chabad religious Jew as an important person in this making this negotiations process? You literally see, in retrospect, so clearly how God's hand is in every single step. So we have the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. After he leaves Russia, he's in Latvia, he's in Riga. And in Riga, there is a group of women that begin a class, actually younger women. I don't know, when I say girls, I don't mean people 10 years old. Maybe they were teenagers or something along those lines. I don't know exact ages of women that started learning Hasidic philosophy. This was a tremendous innovation. We're still in the 1920s. And this was not the domain of women. And there were a number of people that were like, I don't know if this is a good thing. What are women doing learning Hasidic philosophy for? Like, what are they doing this for? And the Rebbe at that time, meaning the previous Rebbe, he strongly encouraged it. He spoke to them, and he very much promoted this idea of these women learning Hasidic philosophy, which again was a complete innovation, never happened before in our history. Of course, has happened many, many times since until this class right now. But at that time, it was a complete innovation, a very, very, very new concept. This group began in 1928 and continued until 1939. Of course, in 1939, as we know what happened then to all of the communities in Latvia and in many other areas of that region, everything ended. But from 1928 until the destruction, the Holocaust in 1939, this was for over a decade. Women gathered, girls and women, they gathered, they studied, and they really delved into Hasidic philosophy with the tremendous encouragement of the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself. Now, why was he encouraging this so much? Because he knew that women are the foundational core of Judaism. Women are the founders of the Jewish home. The truth is, this is not an innovation of the Rebbe. This is something throughout Jewish literature, Jewish Torah writings. When we speak of women, the woman in Jewish thought is called Akeres Habayis, which translates in English to the mainstay of the home. So the woman was always considered the Ikar. Akeres, the mainstay, comes from the word Ikar, which means primary. So this is a traditional Jewish perspective on Jewish women, that women are the most important component in the home and therefore in the Jewish people. Is this how you view the role of women? Is this racist and slanted to women and unfair to men? Is this your perspective? Do you see the woman as the foundation of the home, the foundation of Judaism, the foundation of the Jewish people? That's what I'm telling you. Does that ring true to you in your world?
I certainly see it this way.
Yes, you do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Any dissenting voices? Which is fine. I can handle it. So Rivka sees it. Menucha absolutely sees it. Anyone else see it? That women, it's not, there's men and the women and their bodies are slightly different. And besides that, like, whatever, it's interchangeable. Because Judaism is saying, no, they're not interchangeable. Not just different bodies. Rachel?
I see it this way too.
You see it that way. How do you see it that way, Rachel? What do you see that makes you feel that that's correct? Is it just like in everything, or can you see in some specific area?
Probably there are areas where men are the leaders, but overall, a lot depends on the woman in the family. More, I think.
So what you're saying is the men might take care of politics and world crises, but you see women as the really one that's impacting the home and therefore the family, and therefore ultimately mobilize the life of the Jewish people.
I'm sorry, I have a cat. My dog cat temporarily lives with us.
No problem. You're cat sitting. So you're saying you feel the woman more creates the home than the man, which then ripples into really affecting the flavor of the Jewish people, or the continuity of the Jewish people, or the direction the Jewish people are going, because each family unit is most powerfully affected by the woman.
Yeah, the woman creates a feeling of Jewish home in her family. That depends on the woman, I feel like, mostly.
And if a man had strong Jewish feelings, do you think he would affect the home the same way? I mean, did you feel, I'm just grilling Grachel because I don't know why, third one, but do you feel that, is it that women have more naturally strong Jewish feelings and that's why they're imparting them to the family? Or that women are the ones that are going to make a difference? So if the man has strong Jewish feelings and the woman didn't, it wouldn't trickle into the family. But if the women has strong Jewish feelings, it does affect the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It more affects the family if a woman has the strong feeling. And I can see in life.
That's what you see in life. And Rivka's nodding and Miriam's saying yes. And Menucha, is that what you meant as well?
Woman is created more spiritual, and
we all think so, that's for sure.
Right. If you look at Baal Shuva process, like in most of the cases, the women start this and the men follow. That's my opinion.
Interesting.
It's true what she just said, very true. unless man is very strong, has very strong personality, and he's starting having Balshuva, and then woman follows. But in this case, it's not going to be peaceful way. When woman starts, it's a very peaceful, kind way of bringing Judaism into the world, into the home, into the family, into the home. But when man starts, he has a gevura, and woman has chesed.
That's
And
such a
when
nice
she's-
point, Miriam. We know how to do it.
We
I-
know
I
how
think-
to do it.
we know
We
how
know
to
how
do
to
it.
do it because we're cooking, we give kindness, we give love, we give this comfort in
Nurture.
the coziness in the house. Woman, she will go with what kind of Shabbat we're gonna do, how we will place napkins, we will put flowers, we will beautify our house. We will take from the Shabbos kindness, not harshness.
You're
And
so
then-
right. You are so right, Miriam. Everything you're saying resonates so much. I think we all agree. I would put a little disclaimer on what Menucha said about the process of tshuva. I don't know if that's 100% true. I agree with Menucha that I think women are more naturally spiritual than men. I 100% agree. Like I absolutely agree. And it has to do with our spiritual source. It's not just like we're women, so we see it. No, definitely women have an affinity to godliness. They have less blockages and they come from a different soul source than men, a different dimension of God's energy. So there's reasons why a woman has a spiritual affinity stronger than a man. But I think in the tshuva process, there are many men that might start off. And I think there really depends sort of, for a lot of at least American Jews, on were they raised with Judaism when they were younger and then maybe left it. And now when they're older, they might be coming back to it. Like there might be some feelings, it might be some memories. So I think it can go in either direction in terms of the couple. But I definitely hear what Miriam is saying about the, about the softness of woman in terms of conveying the message, the nurturing of woman. There's a reason why, in other words, what Miriam's saying is there's a reason why we're the primary influencers. There are social influencers, we are family influencers, and through being the influencers of the family, we're really the influencers of the Jewish people, because the Jewish people is comprised of many, many, many families. As Menucha said, because we have a greater spiritual affinity, as Miriam is saying, because we know how to present things and we do it with our nurturance and our warmth and beauty and kindness, everything Miriam said, we will impact no matter what we do, but she's saying we're impacting in a very inviting way. And we're making sure that Judaism stays beloved and stays inviting and stays in the hearts of our family. And that's the continuity of the Jewish people. That's ensuring that it never leaves our hearts, it never leaves our homes, it never leaves our family, it never leaves the people. It's always there. And it might be buried. Things could happen that could bury it, but then it starts coming out, because it's like a fire inside of us. And sometimes it's just a few embers, but then something's going to happen and reignite that fire, because it was really always, always, always there. And that's part of the gift we have of being Jewish women, really, of being Jewish women, of having this enormous power, because again, God made us this way, it's in his hands that we have this. I'm just reminded of Brookline area of Massachusetts. There was this huge mill, a huge factory, produced materials, knit products, like the largest one in America at the time. And it caught on fire. And it took like days to put out the fire, and the whole factory was completely destroyed. The factory employed like 3,000 workers, completely destroyed. I don't know if any of you know this. This happened in, I don't remember when, in the 1990s. And the owner of the factory was a Jewish man who was about 70. And the insurance money he was going to receive was $300 million. And the question was, what was he going to do? Was he going to retire? He's 70 years old with $300 million in his pocket. Or would he insist on rebuilding his factory, even though he's 70 and he's sort of done his time? And then probably he would relocate to an area of cheap labor, which isn't in Massachusetts. And everybody was sort of talking about this. And of course, we have 3,000 workers very invested. And the owner of the factory, he called a press conference and all the factory workers were there. And he basically said, he's rebuilding the factory and he's rebuilding it right here. It's not going anywhere. He's rebuilding it right here. And until the factory is rebuilt and back to functioning, he's continuing to pay the salaries of all the workers. And it was an amazing thing. Amazing. I mean, no, this is unheard of in the world of business to pay 3,000 workers for at least a year. And then I don't remember if it was then or afterwards. I mean, he was all over national television. Like, what is going on? I think it might have been actually at that press conference. And he said, this is what he said. He said, my father was an Orthodox Jew. And this is what he taught me. This is the Jewish values. This is how we live. That we have to value people. That if no one's around, we have to be the man. And we have to take care of people. And he had many interviews. And in these interviews, he kept going back to that point of his Orthodox Jewish father and the values he learned from him. And he did not look religious in any of these interviews, but it was so strong, this message, that what his father taught him, he's 70 years old, stayed with him all these years. And now when he was in this critical moment, that's what came out. And it was an amazing, amazing sanctification of God's name. It was an amazing testimony to God. It was an amazing testimony to Judaism. And it was literally all over the news. Like, I am not exaggerating. The president then was Clinton, and he invited him to like the Senate. Like, it was just such an unheard of concept. He was like the man. Like, wow, this is how we want an American to behave, like a good Jew. And it was just, I think, such a testimony to this idea of what people absorb in their youth, or the messages, does stay with them. Might not have seemed that way, but it does stay with you, and it is a guiding force in your life. And that's why I think sometimes maybe people that were raised this way and left it, or maybe even had like grandparents that were living this way, they absorb messages, they absorb a perspective that comes out sometimes later in their life. But this goes back to the idea, of course, of the woman as the mainstay, because a woman is a primary one giving the children this message, creating this in the home, and impacting the family any way she chooses. Of course, it's not only in Judaism, in any way she chooses, she is going to be the ultimate influencer in her family. But of course, especially in Judaism, both as the one more tuned and as the one that's the nurturer of the family, she's really impacting and creating this continuation of the Jewish people. And especially in terms of redemption, the Jewish woman has a very, very, very pivotal role. Now, when we're talking about women in terms of redemption and the pivotal role of women in terms of redemption, you see this as well. No, we all sort of agreed. I didn't hear any dissension. We all agreed that women are the main ones, the movers and the shakers, the influencers. We see it in Judaism and we see it in everything else. What about in terms of redemption? So this is what Torah says, this is what the sages says, this is what's written in the Talmud, this is what's written in all the Kabbalistic sources, this is what's written in all the Hasidic sources. So any holy book you're going to look, it's the same message. Women are the catalyst for redemption. Women have a power in bringing redemption different than a man. Again, it's not like, well, we're the same, our bodies are just different. No, we're not. We're not the same. And women are the force of redemption. Have you seen this? Can you see this in your life, this idea of women having this deeper connection to redemption, this role of being a redeemer in a way a man is not?
Cyril, how do you define when you say our redeemer, redeeming qualities that...
That's a great question. So I'm looking at it like like, let's say people are in a stuck space, that the woman's gonna be the one to open up those doors, to find the road out.
Okay.
God is telling us something. We're talking about men and women, and here my husband is on our Zoom.
I don't know how to shut them down.
This is surely
How do I
God's
declare
hand
this
trying
thing?
to
How do I
say
turn it off?
something. Maybe we're being too strong, as Miriam was saying.
I can't.
Do
play
you know
with
how
it.
to exit?
Okay, sorry. Let us continue.
You're on our Zoom. So what do you think God was telling me that my husband sabotaged our Zoom for the first time ever when we're talking about this? This is surely a message from God. I'm just wondering what the message is. This is very interesting, this message. I'm going to mull over this one and try to think what message God is giving us, but I know he's giving us a message, but I'm not sure what the message is. I don't know, but I definitely know nothing is random. And this is just like so incredibly the hand of God. And I'm still in my brain saying, okay, God, what's your message? We're talking about women, talking about men. I mean, we're talking about men, but by default, we're talking about men. We're talking about how women impact the family. We're talking about how women impact the world. We're talking about how women bring the redemption, all which is incredibly true. And then my husband gets on, and therefore I get kicked off, and then I get come back on. And I don't know.
No.
I'm not sure.
Maybe we're too much taking on our shoulders.
Maybe God's saying you're really not the solo member. That might be a thought. Maybe that's God's message. I'm not sure what God's message is, but I know he's trying to tell me something. Maybe we should know that they are also partners, maybe secondary partners, but they are also partners in the process, which is sort of reassuring. I mean, it wouldn't be great if we thought we had to do this all ourselves. Maybe that makes sense. That makes sense. Anyone else have any great ideas why God just did that? He's trying to demonstrate something. I know he was. Nothing is random.
Humble us a bit.
Oh, maybe. Definitely a humbling experience. Absolutely a humbling experience. All right. So now that we are properly humbled and properly recognizing that, yes, men do have a role and they do wonderful things. And as I'm giving this class, my husband is giving a class. So yes, men also learn and do their part to bring redemption. It might be secondary to us, but they are doing their part as well. Yes, we definitely want to give them that credit. But the sages do say the women are the force of redemption. And what I was asking, or what I was being asked, was, what does it mean redemption? So I think that's what redemption means. A redeemer means the vision that there's something better out there, that there's a different option, there's a different life. It could be different. And then the drive and the focus to get there. Because that, I think, would be how I would define the quality of redemption. Because when you're satisfied with what's going on, or when you don't believe there's any other option but what's going on, there's really no hope for redemption. If you think this is it, then there's no movement to change. So I think redemption could be economic, it could be societal, it could be in a political forum. Of course, in Judaism, it's the ultimate redemption is Mashiach, but we also always speak of personal redemption, having their own personal redemption, getting out of their own stuck spaces, getting out of their own boxes, getting out of their own limitations, getting out of their own prisons. So in a personal way, we might have what we know we need to be redeemed from, escape from, change, create a new path. And as a society, as a community, as a neighborhood, as a country, as a world. That's the idea of redemption. So do you see this? Because again, this is not being chauvinistic, feminine chauvinism. This is what the sages say. Women are the redeemers. We have the power of redemption. Do you see this in your world, in your experiences, that women might have a vision different than men, that a woman would believe there could be something better, would push for something better, would create change in a way different than a man? And it's fine to say you haven't seen it. I just want to know if this resonates, if anyone's experienced something like this, where they see this also, meaning before people are saying very clearly, they saw sensitivity, spirituality in a woman, they saw the warmth and nurturing in a woman, they saw the ability to mold a family in a woman. do you see the idea of the vision and drive toward redemption in women?
On a very small level, on your family level, I see it very much so. And if I talk about every family, I'm talking about Jewish mother in the family. Maybe husband is not Jewish, but if there is a mother, Jewish mother in the family will be Jewish. And when I say Jewish, not just observing. I'm not even talking observance. I'm talking about Jewish neshama, Yiddishkeit. This is brought by Jewish women, and no wonder why it's known that these days it's known that only Jewish mother can bring Jewish children, even as much as husband, maybe he is Jewish, he's not Jewish, but the nourishment of the child, of the family, it comes through the woman womb.
So
And
what you're saying, Miriam, is correct. And that's the idea, as Miriam's saying. This goes back, of course, to Jewish law, that a Jewish woman child is 100% Jewish.
And this is
Non-Jewish woman, the child is 100%
Right.
non-Jewish. There's
And-
no concept in Judaism of 50%. There's no
Correct.
50%.
right.
You're 100% Jewish or you're 0% Jewish. And it's all solely in the woman, which I definitely agree with Miriam. That definitely shows, going back to what we said before, that would be a tremendous
I'm just saying,
support
it's
for the
more-
idea of being
I'm
the
sorry.
mainstay.
I just want to say that with the statement which our sage is saying that if Jewish woman, then Jewish children, this kind of like, we could prove by all of the things which said today, woman a redeemer, woman a nurturer, woman a Jewish. No wonder why woman is a beginner of Jewish life, Jewish woman. It's like everything which we said, it just feeds this statement that only Jewish woman can bring Jewish children.
Absolutely. And definitely what we were saying before, the statement of the sages, that the women are the foundation, they are the mainstay, they are primary. As Miriam's saying, what better demonstration of this than the very basic fact that a Jewish child is determined by their mother? That definitely expresses the woman as primary. And again, going back to really actually what Miriam said before about the woman as the nurturer, as the receiver. So the woman can nurture and receive that Jewish soul. But if there's not a Jewish woman there, even if there's a Jewish man, so Jewish energy would be brought into the child, but then it would leave because there's no one there to nurture it. But in terms of redemption specifically, does anyone see this in terms of any power of redemption? So Miriam said you see it in the family unit. Of course, that's where we would see it. But do you see this? Have other people seen this in family units or in neighborhoods and communities? This idea of the woman is the redeemer has this power of making that redemption change.
I see a lot of Russian-speaking families who are making a return to observance, about Teshuvah. Majority of those families, women made the first step, and husband followed, and then, they became full partners. But majority of those families, women made the first step towards observance.
Which definitely goes back to what Menucha was saying before about that extra spiritual sensitivity, but also what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think that's a great example of the idea of redemption, redeeming their families. That's pretty intense redemption, from no relationship to God overtly to a relationship to God. This is not working, and there's a better option, and let's break out of this prison of a life without God and be redeemed. Let's have God in our life. That's definitely a power of redemption.
I remember the first time when I learned about Mashiach, redemption, and what Jews are supposed to do. I didn't know about this concept. When I learned this concept, I remember distinctly what I thought. I thought to myself, so Mashiach will come, and if I don't become observant, I would feel so ashamed that I didn't contribute to this enormous
event,
this redemption. It's like, like you come to a potluck and you didn't know it was potluck. You didn't bring
You can't bring it.
You're embarrassed. You're embarrassed. I wouldn't even want to eat because I'm ashamed I didn't bring anything. That's approximately how I felt about it. And that one of the things that influenced me to become observant and started doing mitzvahs and not no transgressions and mitzvahs to contribute to this.
That's so beautiful. What Rivka is saying is so beautiful. It's reminding me of a thought of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says that when Mashiach comes, God and Mashiach, the Redeemer, will go to every single Jew, every man, every woman, every child, and will thank each one for what they have done to create redemption. Meaning, as Rivka sensed then so many years ago, it's not a solo journey, it's not a few people journey, it's a 15 million people journey. And we've been journeying since Egypt to get to this point. And God literally will thank every single person individually, even though God knows they could have done more. And yes, so that's very, very amazingly intuitive that Rivka had that sense right then and there many years ago. And something else that's written in Hasidic sources that Rivka was intuiting, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe says that when Mashiach comes, we'll long back for the exile days. And we're going to long for what? Which problem am I going to be missing? I'm going to be longing to have bars on my windows, longing for crime on the streets, longing for dissension and misunderstandings and pain. What am I going to be missing? Because no, we're going to be longing for the missed opportunities. Because we're going to recognize that, wow, then we had a lot of opportunities to make a difference, to create real growth and change and do things that are only possible in those types of situations, and look back and say, wow, look at all those wasted opportunities. So yeah, that was amazing that you had that feeling right then, just from your gut, from your insides, from your soul. That's really amazing. So anyone else? So Miriam and Rivka both have some vision of women as redeemers. Anyone else has seen this? When we're looking at this idea of women as redeemers, we can go back to the traditional sources. And the first source of women as redeemers was, of course, when we first began our nationhood journey, which was in Egypt. Because we know in Egypt, the sages say that in the merit of the women were the people redeemed from Egypt. Obviously, just as we had this experience in the beginning of this second part of tonight's class, God wants us to remember that the men are players and doing things as well. We'll take that version of the story, Miriam's version. So obviously men were doing things, and there was a Moses and there was an Aaron, and but still the sages give credit to the women. The sages say in the merit of the righteous women, the Jews were redeemed from Egypt, as we will discuss, obviously not tonight because it's already late, which means the women did something more than the men, different than the men, in a way that literally they're credited as the redeemers. Even more than that, the sages also say in the Talmud that in every generation, the redeemers are the women, which again goes back to this point of how we look at ourselves. We are the redeemers. That's how the sages, all of course wonderful men, are looking at our nation and saying the women have that power. The women have this vision of redemption, this drive towards this redemption, this ability to see that it's got to be different, it can be better, it must be better, and to create that change. And I'm sure all of you perhaps have experienced it in your own families, or maybe with your parents' families, or maybe with your grandparents' families, or maybe with your friends. Women having that vision of it's got to get better and we've got to change. And we're not going to just keeping on doing the same thing that's not working. There's a way to do it better. There's a way to do it different. We're going to be redeemed from this situation. We're going to make it different. And so the sages are saying we did it in Egypt. The sages are saying we actually do it every redemption. Of course, we know Purim very famously was through a woman. Also Hanukkah coming up, as we said, in 2 weeks. The sages discuss the women that were the catalyst for the redemption of Hanukkah. And the sages take it more than that. It's not just Purim, it's not just Hanukkah. They say in every generation, the redeemers are the women. That is how Judaism views women. We are the mainstay. We're the power in the home, which means the power in the nation, and we are the redeemers. Not that men are not doing good things, not that they're not contributors, not that they shouldn't also be involved in bringing redemption and in creating a warm, wonderful home, and they are, but women are the redeemers. And Kabbalistically, the Arizal is the second greatest Kabbalist of all times. He lived and was buried in Tzfat. If any of you have been to Tzfat, if you're walking in the old city, they'll show you the synagogue of the Arizal. They might show a few different ones. A lot of different competing places. It all can claim to be the synagogue of the Arizal. They can definitely show you the mikveh, the ritual bath pool of the Arizal, which they say that anyone that immerses in there will for sure repent and return to God. You can definitely see, of course, the gravesite of the Arizal. It's a very, 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 very great holy Jew, as I said, viewed as the second greatest Kabbalist of all times. And he said that the generation of the redemption is a reincarnation. Yes, of course, we do believe in reincarnation. Judaism is a reincarnation of the generation that left Egypt, the generation of the Exodus. Meaning that now, as we are, according to all the rabbis of today, of course, Lubavitcher Rebbe says it very strongly, and it seems generally the voice accepted in Judaism that this is the generation of redemption. This is it. This is the time. This is now, which means, based on the Arizal, that we are those women, that we, the women of today, are a reincarnation of the women that created the redemption in Egypt. And the Rebbe says, that's why, going back to our starting point, that's why his predecessor encouraged the Torah and deep Hasidic study of women in 1928. When the whole world around, the Jewish world, the religious world, is like, women learning deep concept. Okay, you want women to learn the basic verses. That's a nice idea. You want them to learn Jewish law. Of course, they need to know how to run a home. You want them to learn deep Hasidic concepts? What? Said, these women need the power. Hasidus empowers you. Hasidus feeds your soul. These women have to get empowered because they're the ones bringing redemption. Now, why are women the ones bringing redemption? So again, probing a little deeper, a little more Kabbalistically. And as I said before, earlier, when we were discussing women, and we spoke of the sensitivity and the nurturing, I said our soul matter is different. Women are an expression of God's sovereignty. God has 10 spiritual attributes. The lowest of the 10, surprise, surprise, the lowest of the 10 is called sovereignty, the lowest. Sovereignty actually, we're told, has nothing of itself. It's like an empty vessel. All it has is what it receives from the other 9. So it's empty, but then it's the fullest because all of the powers of the other 9 are funneled into sovereignty. And like the woman, sovereignty is the power of creation because all the other dimensions are created by God's sovereignty. But it looks the lowest of the 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the lowest, the empty one, the one that's only filled by the others for the 9 above, the most limited one. And yet the one of creation, the one who's really the fullest because she has everything, and the one that by the redemption will be realized to be the top. Meaning we're told that now in exile it's like an upside down world. What should be on top is on bottom, what should be on bottom is on top. So therefore the world's view of woman was always sort of secondary, and God's sovereignty, which is the spiritual dimension of feminine, is 10. It's on the bottom. It's the lowest. It's the smallest. Little sovereignty. Weird name for something little, but whatever. Little sovereignty has nothing of her own. Is so empty. But when the redemption comes, everything will be twisted right. And what's on the bottom is going to be on the top, and it's going to be revealed that sovereignty is sovereignty. The sovereign, the ruling power, the feminine dimension. So women, women are literally like a mirror image of this dimension of God, of God's feminine dimension. Seemingly lower, like sovereignty is on the bottom, seemingly doesn't have her own resources, like sovereignty has nothing of its own, but really the fullest, as sovereignty really has everything, as it has everything from above. The creative force, just as sovereignty is that which creates all, and by redemption, women, just like sovereignty, will be recognized for what we know, of course, we truly are. And that's why the verse says that in the times of the redemption, it says the woman of valor is the crown of her husband. It says the woman will, and a different verse says, the woman will surround the man, meaning will be around him higher than him. So why is this going to happen then? You know, the crown, like the woman of valor is the crown on top of the head of her husband. Surrounding, beyond. Why is this going to happen then? Because our spiritual source sovereignty will be revealed for what it truly is. And we, the physical component, our dimension will also be revealed for what we truly are. So this is exactly how it's always been viewed. It's not nothing here I'm saying is, new wave, modern ideas to stay current with the times. This is traditional Judaism, both in the revealed parts in Talmud and in the Kabbalistic parts and in the Hasidic parts. And this is the power of the woman. So therefore, why?
Do you want to take one of these?
Oh, we're back. We're going to finish at this point. Why are women
Don't forget.
the redeemers? We're the redeemers because we, more than men, are intrinsically bound up with redemption. Our energy is the energy of redemption. Our dimension will be the dominant dimension at the time of redemption. So therefore, of course, we just got a reminder, the men are also doing good things. They're also part of the process. They're also doing the work. But it's the energy of the woman. And we'll stop at this point. Thank you so much for joining. To be continued. And remember, in 2 weeks, Hanukkah, we're having a wonderful party. So everyone prepare to come and have a wonderful, joyous Hanukkah party in Chicago. Of course, Miriam and Ellen are totally invited. We expect your participation as well. Maybe we will both Zoom if you're not going to surprise us in person. But we should have a wonderful, wonderful Hanukkah party in 2 weeks from tonight. Thank you so much for joining.